Hello Canastota, I'm Sean Becerra, Superintendent of Canastota Central Schools, and this is the weekly video update for Friday, February 12th. As students head into the February break, there continues to be a lot going on at the school. As I mentioned last week, our district is following the recommendation of the Madison County Board of Health and abiding by the month-long window before considering the start of high-risk winter sports. This month-long window was intended to allow additional analysis of the regional COVID situation. We continue to live by that recommendation and eagerly await an update from the Board of Health in the coming days. In the meantime, the district will provide an opportunity for students to have some level of involvement in sports like basketball and volleyball while still upholding the recommended safety standards of the county. Starting with the JV and varsity levels, basketball, boys and girls basketball and boys volleyball teams will be able to participate in skill and drill sessions under the direction of our now board-appointed coaches of those sports. We want to be perfectly clear, we are still following the Board of Health guidance and are not participating in interscholastic competition. The workouts overseen by our coaching staff are also non-contact. For example, basketball players will not be scrimmaging, but rather focusing on things like dribbling, shooting, and general conditioning. Each athlete will also have their own ball to use to minimize same surface contact. We are pleased to offer our students this opportunity to start getting involved once again in their sports. And if the guidance from the Department of Health opens the door in the coming days, our students will already have a jump in starting their season. Regionally, there's a lot of momentum to move other high-risk sports, such as girls volleyball, potentially to the Fall 2 season, which would start in March. And in terms of wrestling, there's a lot of momentum to move wrestling potentially to the spring season. So much more to come on both of those sports. Given these likely moves, details of the launch of any skill sessions or actual practice sessions related to girls volleyball or wrestling will be forthcoming as the situation becomes more defined. With any specific questions about our plan for athletics, please contact Athletic Director Stan Congdon. In the next couple of weeks, our winter newsletter will be coming out, and in that newsletter, a portion of my update focuses on the need for balance in how we navigate through the pandemic. We need to both get through the immediate day-to-day challenges presented by the pandemic while at the same time make sure that we have an eye on the long-term success of the district. And that means building systems, process, and structure that's sustainable over time. Part of that process requires that we engage in something that some consider to be a dirty word. That word is data. More specifically, the analysis of data that will inform our roadmap to continuous improvement. I mention this now because you're going to hear about it a lot in the coming months. And for some people, just the thought of data is the ultimate cure for insomnia. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes outlining exactly what I mean and why data, and specifically the strategic use of data, is not only important but can actually be interesting. To do this, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite subjects, sports. I coached basketball for quite a few years, so I'll use a familiar example. Let's say that a player wants to become a better shooter, so he decides he's going to put up at least 100 shots a day after practice. That's a specific measurable target. Again, remember, his goal is to become a more effective outside shooter. Based on how this plays out, we can use this data to help us to help the player get better. But it's really important to see how we use it, as that will determine if it's actually valuable or not. So let's look at a few scenarios to illustrate this point. Here's the player's report card at the end of their week of getting up extra shots. Player 1 made 450 shots. Player 2 made 250 shots, and player 3 made no shots. So who had the best week? The quick answer is player 1, who by far made the most baskets and had the highest percentage. This is the perfect example of how data just used for collecting information serves no purpose, and in some cases can actually become counterproductive and misleading. The point of collecting data is to cause us to ask the question of why we got the results we got, focus and narrow our attention on how to improve, and then guide us in formulating a plan of action. So let's dive deeper into this example on what really happened. Player 1, the one who made 450 out of 500 shots, appeared to have the best week. But more specific details provide us additional information that's important to our evaluation. If the ultimate goal is for the player to be a better outside shooter, the shots need to mirror the level of challenge required to be an effective outside shooter. In exploring player 1's shooting record, we find out that his 500 shots were all layups. Yes, he made a lot of shots. Yes, he made a high percentage of those shots, but the level of rigor and challenge was not adequate if the goal is to become a great outside shooter. For this player, the coach will certainly make some adjustments and ask the player to take more challenging shots from the outside. Even though he'll make fewer shots, it'll be more helpful to reach his goal of becoming a great outside shooter. Player 2 made 250 out of 500 shots. In reality, this was a pretty good performance because even though he made far fewer shots than the first player and shot a far lower percentage, he benefited because he was practicing at the appropriate level of challenge. His shots were all coming from the 15 to 20 foot range. He's practicing at a level of challenge and rigor that will help him improve. Now let's look at the third player. Player 3 made no shots, but the reason is he didn't stay after it all. He was a no-show. He didn't make any shots because he didn't take any shots. So do we have a motivation problem? We have a potential conflict with time and injury? These are all questions we need to get answers to if we're going to use this baseline level of data in a useful way. And in fact, the solution to the problem may be far different than player 1, who is showing up every day but not challenged sufficiently. So as you can see from this basketball example, the real value of data comes from when we use it to inform our next steps. And in many cases, use it to help us ask the next layer of questions and create a next level that data will make us better. As you can see, just collecting the data provided no value. Asking critical questions, updating action plans, and analyzing the next level of data is where the value actually comes from. That's where the school district is going with respect to the use of data. We're not using it just as a hoop to jump through, but rather as a vehicle to make us more efficient, effective, and pinpointed with how we help students learn. We know that every high-level team, company, and yes, school district uses a comprehensive data collection and analysis process to get better. Applying the basketball example to school, player 1, the one who made all the layups, is like a student who is getting good grades but is not being challenged in a way that will help them improve. The data might be telling us that an adjustment in the rigor of the curriculum the student is engaged in is in order. Player 3 is like the student who has bad grades, but they just aren't showing up. They're not engaged at all. The challenge is to get them to show up so that we can see where they are academically, because right now we don't know what they're capable of. The intervention utilized in this case will therefore be much different than in our first example. And finally, player 2 is like the student who is practicing at the level that is appropriate and is getting data that provides a good barometer of his progress. He's showing up, he's practicing at the right level of challenge, and therefore his improvement is much more easily and accurately measured over a series of weeks. The high-performing organizations understand that a gut feeling isn't enough, and even extensive experience isn't enough. Experience is only part of the equation, but experience informed by a strategic use of data is an unbeatable combination. So when you hear me talk about data, you shouldn't cringe. In fact, you should be happy to know that we're using data, because just like the basketball player getting the extra 100 shots up each day, we need to be about continuous improvement, high expectations, and ultimately getting results. Much more on this to come in the upcoming weeks. So as we head into February break, I hope you get a chance to do some of the things that make you happy. Enjoy your weekend, and go Raiders.